Hi. So I totally forgot to film the class because my internet went out in the middle of class and I think I got discombobulated somehow and totally forgot. So I wanted to tell you real quick what we did. So we first started off going over the homework. So if you remember, let's see if I can do my pointer. Hold on, sorry. Let's see. Oh, I guess I can't. Oh, okay. Um, if you remember, this was your homework, the causes of the American Revolution Google slide. Um, Everyone got split up in breakout rooms and they talked to their group if they had any questions. They compared answers. They talked about the summaries and how it led to the American Revolution. Then, as a breakout room, they also talked about their discussion question, and then some of them actually completed their discussion post during that time. So, the first part of class, we kind of just talked and checked in with one another, and then they had about 15 to 20 minutes in their breakout room to do all of this stuff. So, again, it was due last night at 11:59 p.m., but I gave them time to talk about it as a class. And then I went over if they had any questions about any one of these terms, if they just wanted clarity on what the summary was, on how it led to the American Revolution. So if you have any questions, just email me. If you're wondering, okay, can you help me out with number 11, number 5? Just for you, just tell me which number you wanted to check, and I'd love to just clarify it with you. Okay? Then the last thing we did in class is we started the homework for tonight. So this is technically not due until tomorrow at 11:59 p.m., but it is about one of the topics, which is the Stamp Act. So let me start with where I started with your class. So, sorry, it takes me a second. Okay, stamp tax. Okay, this is on Canvas. I wanted to tell them, or I told your classmates that this picture on the left is an actual picture of the stamp. Now, keep in mind the Stamp Act and the stamp tax are not a tax on stamps. They are a tax on newspapers and printed material. And when you paid the tax, that means you got stamped. So again, it's not a tax on stamps, it's a tax on newspapers. And when you pay the tax, you get the stamp. Keep in mind, this tax is not expensive at all. It's only 1 penny. So again, the colonists are not going to be mad about the cost. They're going to be mad for a different reason. The picture on the right is of a skull and crossbones, and this is actually revolutionary propaganda. This was designed by revolutionaries, so either the Sons and Daughters of Liberty or someone else. And it basically is kind of, getting you mad about the Stamp Act and kind of implying that the Stamp Act is going to bring the death of us because they are using this like death symbol. So, picture on the left is the real stamp tax stamp, and then the picture on the right is revolutionary. So, I read this to your classmates. After winning the French and Indian War in 1763, the British were in a lot of debt. Since the war benefited the American colonists as much as anyone else in the British Empire, the British government decided that those colonists should shoulder part of the war's cost. And then we talked about this question right here. I asked your classmates if they thought it was fair that England was taxing the colonies. England owns the colonies. The colonies are still English. So I asked them if they thought it was fair that England was taxing them to pay for some of the war. It was pretty split. Half your classmates thought that it made sense that England was taxing them because when your country goes to war, taxes usually happen. But some of your classmates said it wasn't fair because the colonists fought in the war and they didn't even get to go into the land that they were supposed to. So why should they also have to pay taxes? So it was a good discussion. People were chiming in on the chat box if they thought that was fair and logical. Okay, moving forward, the British government tried to raise money by taxing the American colonists. In March 1765, the British passed the Stamp Act. It went into effect in November 1st, 1765, and it placed a tax on all newspapers and other printed materials. Again, the Stamp Act would have an effect on anyone who bought a printed item like a newspaper. This act caused outrage in the colonies, and our goal today is to figure out this essential question. Why were the colonies upset about the Stamp Act? Then we went over to the Google Doc, and we started to read Document A. Document A is written by BW. It's a public letter. And I reminded your classmates that before any document, you have to do sourcing information. Sourcing is either in the beginning or the end. In this case, it's in both. So we're going to look at both. This public letter appeared on the front page of the Boston Gazette and Country Journal, a colonial newspaper. On October 7th, 1765, the author's name was printed as B.W. And then down here, it says B.W. again, which is the author. To the inhabitants of the province of the Massachusetts Bay, that must be the title. And the Boston Gazette and Country Journal is where it's coming from, and the date. So I told your classmates that I want you to make a comment. For every document you ever do in this class, I want you to do the sourcing information. So, who wrote it? B.W. When did you write it? October 7th, 1765. Where? Boston. And what type of source? This is interesting. It's a public letter, so it is a letter, but BW wanted it to be read by everybody. So this person also got it published in the newspaper. So it's a public letter, but also a newspaper. So that's the sourcing information. And in fact, that's the answer for number 1. I don't always do this, but I did make the first question the sourcing information. So for all the document questions, you can keep it nice and short and sweet. And you can actually do this right here, bullet points. Who wrote it? BW. October 7th, 1765. And Boston. So even if I don't ask a sourcing question, you should always do a comment and do the sourcing information. Then as a class, we guessed as to why BW was hiding behind their initials. Usually you would see an author's full name, but I pointed out that this is unique. We have BW hiding behind their initials. I had your classmates think about it. Why do they want to stay anonymous? And your classmates decided, a lot of them said, that they think BW is going to say something that could get them in trouble. They think BW might be saying something about England, and they don't want to be caught. That was a very good guess by your classmates, and it's going to be true based after you read this letter. October 7th, 1765 is important because the Stamp Act doesn't even start being applied until November. So it's interesting that this person, BW, is going to be writing about the Stamp Act before it even happens. We talked about Boston. I reminded them that Boston is a revolutionary hotspot. Boston is where the American Revolution is growing. Boston is where the Tea Party is going to happen. Boston is going to be where the massacre occurs. So definitely Boston's a very important city when studying the American Revolution. And then we talked about just how unique this is, that BW is not writing a private letter to someone, but they are writing a public letter, and they wanted it to be published in the newspaper. So that's interesting. We then completed number 2, what is going on in this time period. This is historical context. It's kind of like the background of what's going on. And we just talked about how the American Revolution is growing. That so far, the French and Indian War has ended, and Britain is in debt, and they are taxing the colonists. And so that's super important to know that this is the very beginning of the American Revolution. Britain needs to gain money after the war, and they're starting to tax the colonists. So then your classmates completed 3 on their own. Why are the colonists upset about the Stamp Act? And for that answer, you're going to have to read BW's response. So the assignment is pretty straightforward. You just read the document, do the sourcing information, read the document, answer the questions. So document B has 2 questions. Document C has 4 questions. And the final questions, there's only 3 of them, but they should be in formal writing. Complete sentences, making sure you're giving all your effort in these last 3 questions. So, again, so sorry for not recording it. Again, I think it was just the internet thing threw me off. I even wrote a little note to myself, and I just think I got thrown off. But thank you for having patience, and please email me if you have any questions. Okay, bye.